There are moments that don't look dangerous at first. They look small, harmless, forgettable. A notification, a name on your screen, a simple message that says, "Hey, it's been a while." That's how it started. Not with intention, not with dissatisfaction, not with some grand plan to destroy my life. Just a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in 18 years. Her name was Rachel. And before you assume anything, no, she wasn't an ex-wife. She wasn't some dramatic, unfinished chapter. She was my college almost. The girl I dated for 2 years. The girl I thought I'd marry. The girl who left when I wasn't ready to grow up. We hadn't spoken since graduation. Until that Tuesday at 9:14 p.m. My wife, Hannah, was upstairs putting our daughter to bed. I was on the couch, half watching a baseball game, half scrolling through emails. When her name popped up on Facebook Messenger, my chest tightened before my brain caught up. Rachel Thompson. Profile picture. Older, obviously. Softer around the eyes. Still that same sideways smile. The message was simple. "Hey, I saw your name come up in people you may know." Made me smile. "Hope you're doing well." That was it. No flirtation. No suggestion. Just nostalgia. And here's the truth men don't say. Nostalgia is more dangerous than attraction. Attraction is physical. Nostalgia is emotional. It reminds you of who you were. And sometimes, that's more intoxicating than who you are. I should have ignored it. Closed the app. Left it unanswered. But I didn't. Because curiosity feels harmless. And harmless things don't ruin marriages. Right? I replied, "Hey, wow, that's unexpected. I'm good. Married. 2 kids. You. Neutral. Informational. Safe." She responded 5 minutes later. "Divorced. 1 son. Life's been interesting." That word lingered. Interesting. We started talking. At first, it was light. Careers. Cities. Mutual friends. Then it shifted. "Do you ever think about those days?" she asked. Of course I did. Everyone romanticizes the past. College felt simpler. Less responsibility. More possibility. Back then, I wasn't someone's husband. Someone's father. Someone's provider. I was just me. I do sometimes, I admitted. And that's when the door cracked open. Nothing inappropriate happened that first night. No explicit messages. No declarations. But when I went upstairs to bed, something felt unsettled. Hannah was asleep, curled toward my side of the bed. I lay there staring at the ceiling. And I realized something uncomfortable. Talking to Rachel hadn't made me want her. It made me miss myself. The version of me before mortgages. Before PDA meetings. Before constant responsibility. The guy who played guitar until 2 a.m. Who talked about moving to California. Who believed life was wide open. Marriage doesn't steal that version of you. But it buries him under duty. And duty is heavy. The next day, she messaged again. "I forgot how easy it was to talk to you." That sentence did something to me. Because when was the last time someone described me as easy to talk to? At home, conversations were logistical. Schedules. Bills. Groceries. Hannah and I loved each other. But we operated like a team managing a company. Efficiency over intimacy. And I didn't even realize I missed that intimacy until someone mirrored it back to me. We started messaging during lunch breaks. Then in the evenings. Always innocent on the surface. But emotionally layered. She remembered details about me. My old band. My obsession with classic Mustangs. The poem I wrote once in a literature class. I had forgotten those versions of myself. She hadn't. And being remembered feels powerful. Especially when you feel invisible in your current life. Here's the part that makes me uncomfortable to admit. I didn't tell Hannah. Not because I thought I was cheating. Because I knew how it would sound. "Hey, my college ex reached out, and we've been talking." Even if nothing physical happened, secrecy changes the tone. And I felt that shift. Every time my phone buzzed, I angled the screen away. Every time Hannah walked into the room, I closed the app. That's when you know something isn't neutral anymore. Not because of content. Because of concealment. 2 weeks in, Rachel sent a message that crossed a line. Not explicitly, but emotionally. "I used to think we'd end up together," she wrote. "Sometimes I wonder what that life would have looked like." My chest tightened. That sentence isn't about the present. It's about the hypothetical. And hypotheticals are dangerous. Because they're perfect. No bills. No arguments. No laundry on the floor. Just fantasy. I stared at the screen for a long time. And instead of shutting it down, I replied, "Yeah, I've thought about that too." There it was. Not an affair, but an opening. That night, Hannah asked me something simple. "Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course," I said automatically. She tilted her head slightly. "You seem distracted lately." I forced a smile. "Just work stuff." Lie. Not because I was unhappy in my marriage, but because part of me was elsewhere. And divided attention is the beginning of emotional betrayal. 3 days later, Rachel suggested something small. "Would it be weird if we grab coffee sometime? Just to catch up?" My pulse quickened. This was the pivot point. Texting is abstract. Coffee is real. Real means presence. Presence means chemistry. And chemistry doesn't care about vows. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. "I don't know if that's a good idea." That was honest. Her reply came quickly. "I get it. I don't want to complicate your life." That sentence did something manipulative without intending to. It made me want to prove that my life wasn't fragile, that I had control. "That's not what I meant," I responded. And just like that, I was negotiating a boundary I should have reinforced. Here's the truth no one warns you about. Most affairs don't start with dissatisfaction. They start with curiosity, with ego, with the feeling of being remembered. I wasn't looking to leave my wife. I wasn't planning betrayal. I was chasing something far more subtle. Validation. Identity. The echo of who I used to be. The night before we were supposed to meet for coffee, I couldn't sleep. Hannah was next to me, breathing steadily. I stared at her in the dim light. She had been there through everything. Job stress. My father's death. The birth of our daughter. She knew my worst habits. My worst moods. She chose me daily. And I was about to test that loyalty for what? A memory? A version of myself I wasn't sure even existed anymore. I got up quietly and walked downstairs. Sat at the kitchen table in the dark. Phone in my hand. I opened Rachel's last message. "Tomorrow at 10. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could still stop this. Still pull back. Still choose the life I built over the life I imagined. But I didn't fully understand why this pull felt so strong. It wasn't about her. It was about something unresolved in me. And until I figured out what that was, I was standing at the edge of something I might not be able to undo. I typed one word. "Okay." And press send. Men don't always cheat because they don't love their wives. Sometimes they cheat because they don't know who they are anymore. And I was about to find out which man I really was. I arrived 15 minutes early. That should tell you everything. If it were truly harmless, I wouldn't have checked the mirror twice in the car. I wouldn't have changed my shirt that morning. That wouldn't have rehearsed neutral conversation topics in my head like I was preparing for an interview. But I did. Because this wasn't just coffee. It was a collision between who I am and who I used to be. The cafe was small, quiet, the kind of place with exposed brick and handwritten menus. Safe, public, respectable. I chose a table near the window. Not hidden, not intimate, transparent. That's what I told myself I was being. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately. Older, yes. Lines around her eyes. A different haircut, but the same energy. She spotted me and smiled. And something inside my chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with romance. It was recognition. She sat down. "Wow," she said softly. "You look the same." We both laughed. We didn't, but we pretended. The first 15 minutes were light. Work, kids, aging parents, surface-level updates that made us feel like responsible adults. But underneath that, something else hummed. Memory, history, unfinished questions. At one point she said, "You seem calmer." "I'm tired," I replied. She tilted her head. "No, it's different. You're contained." Contained. That word hit me. Because that's exactly how I feel most days. Contained. Responsible. Managed. Predictable. "I guess that's what happens," I said. "Life narrows." She looked out the window. Or we let it. That sentence lingered between us. Here's what surprised me. There wasn't instant chemistry. No electric tension. No movie scene spark. What there was comfort. Familiar rhythm. Shared language from a different season of life. She remembered how I take my coffee. I remembered her nervous habit of tapping her ring finger when she's thinking. Those details felt intimate. Not because they were romantic, because they were specific. And being known specifically is powerful. At some point, the conversation shifted. It always does. So, she said carefully, "Are you happy?" The same question Hannah had asked days earlier. Two women. Same words. Different weight. With my life. I asked. With you, she clarified. That's when the illusion cracked slightly. Because happiness with circumstances is easy to answer. Happiness with yourself. That's harder. I don't know, I admitted. She studied me quietly. You used to feel restless, she said. In a good way. Like you were going somewhere. And now? She hesitated. Now you seem like you're standing still. That stung more than I expected. Not because she was insulting me. Because she might have been right. Marriage doesn't stop movement. But routine can. Responsibility can. The slow accumulation of practical decisions can. I used to talk about starting my own business. Writing something meaningful. Traveling more. Now my goals revolve around mortgage payments and college funds. Important things. But not necessarily alive things. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. Regret what? Not choosing something bigger. I almost said no. That reflex to defend your life choices. But honesty felt easier with her. Because she knew the earlier version of me. Sometimes, I said. The words settled heavy. Not regret about my wife. Not regret about my daughter. Regret about shrinking parts of myself. And for a second, I realized something dangerous. Rachel wasn't offering herself. She was offering an exit. Not physically. Psychologically. A way to step back into a more expansive version of me. And that's far more seductive than attraction. When we finished our coffee, there was a pause. The kind where both people sense the next move matters. We could do this again, she said gently. There it was. Not a demand. An invitation. And I felt the fork in the road, clearly. This wasn't about cheating in the obvious sense. This was about emotional migration. Shifting energy from my marriage to a place that felt lighter. Less demanding. More nostalgic. Maybe, I said. Even as I said it, I knew that was the wrong answer. On the drive home, I didn't feel excited. I felt unsettled. Because the fantasy didn't hold up in real time. She wasn't the solution to my restlessness. She was a mirror, reflecting something I hadn't wanted to examine. It wasn't my marriage that felt small. It was me. I had let parts of myself atrophy. Creativity, risk, curiosity. And instead of reviving them inside my life, I was tempted to outsource them. That realization hit harder than any flirtation could. When I walked into the house, Hannah was folding laundry in the living room. Ordinary scene. Soft light through the curtains. Our daughter coloring on the floor. Nothing cinematic. Just real. She looked up and smiled. How was your day? And there was again. The choice. Lie. Or step into discomfort. It was complicated, I said. She paused. Complicated how? My heart pounded. Because honesty doesn't just expose you. It risks everything. There's something I need to tell you, I said. Her expression shifted immediately. Concern. Not anger. What? I sat down across from her. I met Rachel today. The name meant nothing to her at first. My college girlfriend, I clarified. Silence. Not explosive. Just heavy. You met her, she repeated. For coffee. The air in the room changed. Not because she assumed betrayal. Because she felt the omission. How long have you been talking? She asked quietly. And that question pierced. Because it revealed what this really was. Secrecy. 2 weeks, I admitted. She inhaled slowly. You didn't tell me. No. What? I searched for a justification. Couldn't find one that wasn't selfish. Because I liked how it felt. I said finally. There it was. The ugliest, most honest sentence I've spoken in years. She didn't yell. That almost made it worse. She looked hurt. Not betrayed. Hurt. Did you want something to happen? She asked. No. But I paused. And that's what scares me. Her eyes filled slightly. What does that mean? It means I wasn't chasing her, I said. I was chasing who I used to be. That was the truth. And it sounded pathetic out loud. We sat in silence. Our daughter humming softly on the floor, unaware of tectonic shifts happening above her head. Are you unhappy with me? Hannah asked. That question broke something in me. No, I said immediately. I'm unhappy with how small I've let myself become. Tears filled her eyes. Then why didn't you talk to me? Because it's easier to be seen by someone from your past than to risk redefining yourself in your present. But I didn't say that. I didn't know how. I whispered. That night was long. Not explosive. Not dramatic. But raw. We talked for hours. About drift. About routine. About feeling more like managers than partners. About missing spontaneity. About fear. And for the first time in years, we weren't discussing schedules. We were discussing ourselves, which is infinitely more vulnerable. The next morning, I sent Rachel a message. I can't do this. It's not fair to my wife. Or to me. She replied simply. I understand. I think you're right. No drama. No persuasion. Because deep down, I think she knew too. This wasn't about us. It was about who we were afraid of becoming. Here's what I understand now. Emotional affairs don't begin with desire. They begin with neglect. Not neglect of your partner. Neglect of yourself. And if you don't confront that honestly, you'll keep looking for mirrors in the wrong places. I almost stepped into something that would have been easy to justify. Nothing physical. Nothing explicit. Just emotional escape. But escape doesn't solve dissatisfaction. It postpones it. And I'm done postponing. The real work starts now. And it won't be nostalgic. It'll be uncomfortable. Because I don't need Rachel to feel alive again. I need to rebuild that inside my own life. And that's harder. The morning after I told Hannah, everything felt fragile. Not broken. Fragile. Like glass that hadn't shattered, but had cracked enough to remind you how easily it could. We moved carefully around each other at breakfast. Not cold. Not distant. Just aware. Awareness changes a marriage more than anger ever does. I expected punishment. Cold shoulders, sarcasm, withdrawal. Instead, she asked something I didn't expect. Do you want our life, or do you just feel responsible for it? That question went straight through me. Because responsibility can look like love from the outside. You pay bills, you show up, you fix things, you stay. But wanting is different. Wanting requires choice. And choice requires intention. I want it, I said quietly. Then fight for it, she replied. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. Just honestly. The easy part would have been cutting Rachel off and calling that redemption. But that wouldn't have solved anything. Because Rachel wasn't the problem. She was a symptom of drift, of comfort turning into autopilot, of me shrinking into predictability. If I didn't confront that, something or someone else would eventually trigger the same vulnerability. So instead of damage control, we chose excavation. And excavation is messy. That week, Hannah and I started talking in ways we hadn't in years. Not about tasks, about tension, about loneliness inside togetherness, about how easy it is to become co-managers of a household instead of partners in a life. I miss you, she admitted one night. I'm right here, I replied automatically. She shook her head. No, I miss the version of us that felt curious. That word again. Curious. Curiosity had almost led me out the door. But curiosity inside a marriage, that's oxygen. We asked uncomfortable questions. When did we stop flirting? When did we stop surprising each other? When did we decide stability was enough? Neither of us had an answer. Because it didn't happen all at once. It happened gradually. Tiny compromises. Deferred conversations. Exhaustion winning over connection. No betrayal. Just slow erosion. And erosion feels safe. Until you realize how much is worn away. I did something I hadn't done in years. I asked her out. Not, want to grab dinner. Not, what do you want to eat? I planned it. Made reservations. Arranged childcare. Showed up intentional. She noticed. Women always notice effort. That night, across from her at a small restaurant downtown, I looked at her differently. Not as the mother of my daughter. Not as the woman who manages half of our logistics. But as the person I once couldn't stop thinking about. And something subtle shifted. Because attraction isn't about novelty. It's about attention. And I hadn't been paying attention. At one point, she reached across the table and said softly, I was scared. Of what? I asked. That you were already halfway gone. That hit me harder than any accusation could have. Because she wasn't wrong. Emotionally, I had been drifting. Not toward another woman. Away from myself. And when a man drifts from himself, he inevitably drifts from his marriage. I'm still here, I said. She held my gaze. Then stay. The hardest part wasn't rebuilding romance. It was rebuilding transparency. Trust doesn't reset because you confess. It recalibrates slowly. For weeks, I left my phone face up. Not performatively. Just open. If she asked a question, I answered fully. No defensiveness. No minimizing. Because secrecy had been the real betrayal. Not coffee, not conversation, concealment. And concealment erodes intimacy faster than infidelity. I also had to confront something uncomfortable alone. Why did being remembered by Rachel feel so intoxicating? The answer wasn't flattering. Because I hadn't remembered myself in a long time. I stopped playing guitar, stopped writing, stopped dreaming beyond practicality. I outsourced vitality to nostalgia, instead of cultivating it now. So I pulled the guitar out again, sat on the edge of the bed one night, and played badly. Hannah listened from the doorway, smiling. "I forgot you did that," she said. So did I. That sentence carried weight. Because losing parts of yourself in adulthood feels normal. But it isn't inevitable. You just have to decide to reclaim them, without blowing up your life to do it. A few weeks later, I ran into a friend who asked casually, "Whatever happened to that old girlfriend of yours? Rachel, right?" I paused. "Nothing," I said. And for the first time, that answer felt clean. Not suppressed, not unresolved, just complete. Because the chapter wasn't about her. It was about clarity. One evening, Hannah and I were sitting on the back porch after our daughter went to bed. Quiet, soft summer air. She leaned against me and said, "I don't want perfect. I want present." That line stayed with me. Because perfection is exhausting. Presence is powerful. I had been present physically, but emotionally divided. Now, when I sit beside her, I choose to be there. Fully. No parallel fantasies. No alternate timelines. Just this one. Here's what I've learned. Affairs don't always begin with lust. Sometimes they begin with nostalgia. With ego. With the desire to feel expanded instead of contained. But expansion doesn't require escape. It requires honesty. With yourself first. Then with your partner. I thought I was tempted by another woman. In reality, I was tempted by a previous version of me. And the only way to honor that version wasn't to revisit it. It was to evolve it. Inside the life I've already built. Hannah and I aren't suddenly perfect. We still argue. Still get tired. Still forget to check in sometimes. But now, when something feels off, we say it. Not weeks later. Not after resentment builds. Immediately. Because silence is where drift begins. If you're a man reading this, and you feel the pull of nostalgia, pause. Ask yourself what you're actually missing. Is it her? Or is it you? Because chasing memory won't restore identity. It'll just fracture stability. And stability isn't boring. It's earned. The message I never should have answered almost cost me something sacred. Not because of what happened, but because of what it revealed. I don't need an old love to remind me who I am. I need the courage to become that man again here. With a woman who chose me. With a family I built. With a life I sometimes forget to appreciate. And this time, I'm not choosing responsibility. I'm choosing intention. Because love isn't maintained by accident. It's maintained by decision. Daily. And this is mine.